8.5, probability distributions and expected value. We start with a couple of definitions. Random variable is a number for the outcomes of an experiment. A probability distribution is a table of all probabilities. A histogram is a bar graph of all probabilities. An expected value is the number of things, or whatever we're talking about in the problem, that you'd expect to see in the long run. So get those definitions, learn those definitions. You need to know what those things mean. Example 1, consider an experiment where 2 fair coins are tossed. Give the probability distribution and a histogram for the number of heads showing. Find the probability that at least one coin comes up heads. Okay. So what? We're tossing 2 fair coins. So think about flipping a coin. You flip a coin, it's either heads or tails, right? Give the probability distribution and histogram for the number of heads showing. So remember what a probability distribution is. A probability distribution is a table of all the probabilities. So we have to think about what is everything that could happen in this experiment where we're tossing 2 fair coins. But it's kind of important that we identify the random variable in this problem. And we haven't done that yet. So in this problem, the random variable is a number for the outcomes of an experiment. So notice we're looking for the number of heads showing. Okay, that's going to be our random variable, which we can call x. So think about x. X is going to take on a number, the number of heads showing. If we flip 2 coins, think about how many heads can possibly show up. Well, you might have 0 heads showing up, or maybe just one of them is heads, or maybe both of them are heads. So x is the random variable for this problem, and it can take on values of either 0, 1, or 2. That's very important. So then think about the probability. Okay, when you flip 2 coins, you're either going to get heads and heads, heads and tails, tails and heads, or tails and tails. That's really all that can happen. So if you think about it, the number of heads showing, if there are 0, that's like if both of them are tails. Okay, so what's the probability of that situation? The probability of 0 heads, or in other words, the probability of both of them are tails, that's 1/4. 1 out of 4 outcomes. Probability of 1 heads showing up, well, that's these 2 right here. Either the first one's heads or the second one's heads. And there are 2 out of the 4 outcomes, so you can say 2/4, or you can reduce that to 1/2. And 2 heads is right here, heads and heads. That's 1 out of the 4 outcomes, so the probability of that is 1/4. So a probability distribution doesn't have to be confusing. It doesn't have to be difficult at all. It's just a table that shows you all of the probabilities for whatever the experiment is. Now, a histogram is just a bar graph showing the same thing. So generally on the bottom, you're going to have the x values. So in this case, x can take on 0, 1, and 2. On the vertical axis, it's generally the probability. Now remember, probability has to be between 0 and 1. So the highest you can possibly go on this axis is 1. So we can do something like this. We've got 0, 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, 1. So we're going to draw a bar graph, okay? So the first bar, 1/4, is the probability. That's like 0.25. So I'm just going to draw a bar that goes to 0.25. And for 1 head showing, the probability was 1/2 or 0.5. I'm going to draw a bar that goes up to 0.5. And then the next one, 1/4, has a probability of 0.25. So I just draw another bar that goes to 0.25. That's it. That's a histogram. That histogram shows me the exact same information as the probability distribution. I kind of prefer the distribution. I think it's easier to look at, but sometimes maybe the histogram will be easier to look at. So then the last part of this says find the probability that at least one heads comes up. So at least one means 1 or 2, right? So the probability is going to be 1/2 plus 1/4. Probability of at least one. Actually, let's do it like this. Probability of greater than or equal to 1 heads showing up is going to be 1/2 plus 1/4. That's 2/4 plus 1/4. That's 3/4. And you can see the same thing over here in the histogram. You'd add 0.5 plus 0.25 to get 0.75. It's the same thing. Same thing.